stream is live.
Okay, so welcome everybody. We're at the January 22nd meeting of the MBTA Writer Oversight Committee. Obviously this is being recorded and we're streaming. We'll start out, see if anybody has any public comments. I don't see any members of the public here. So if it's all right with everybody, let's go on to the subcommittee reports.
Brian's going to be here at 5:30, and so can we do marketing?
Sure.
So Stefan?
Sorry?
Marketing?
Oh, I think you had said that you wanted to, based on the better notes that you had from the meeting that we had. Are you still up for it?
Sure.
If you don't mind.
No problem.
Yeah, I remember you said after the meeting last time, you said you'd taken better notes, and so you prefer to give them, and I'm all for that.
Yeah. So
You don't wish you had him back, you know?
I have one thing to add
Sure.
that you might not bring up. We did talk a bit about Forest Hills reconfiguration and it being just about done. So the upper busway is so much better now. The bays, there's so many buses go into the upper busway, and the bays are all labeled. The pathways, they keep it nice and clean. Just saying, I'm hoping, I see some interesting electrical stuff, so I'm hoping they're putting one of those next bus things on. There is one inside the station, but it would be helpful outside. But anyway, I'm good with it. I don't know how the automobile people feel about it, because the whole thing for that particular project was the bridge came down.
Right.
The bridge bypassed Forest Hill Station. So I have a girlfriend that drives over it that complains to me all the time, but I don't know if her complaints are valid, if indeed traffic is worse.
Okay.
Just saying.
Okay, but the bus, for the commuters, things are going better for the public transportation.
Well, just clear before, until they had it done, you scooted everywhere,
Yeah.
which were, but they worked like heck and they worked through the cold weather, so good
Terrific.
for them.
Glad to hear that, thank you.
And I won't go into it now because I haven't been able to survey the whole thing, but on a related note, hopefully next month I'll be able to tell you some other good news in a similar vein about the Sullivan Square bus reconfiguration, because that is also, at first glance, seeming to be a big improvement. More on that next month.
Great, thank you, Stefan. Okay, we're back to you, Len.
yeah, I left my notes, and so now I'm just trying to remember. I mean, so one thing I know that we certainly wanted to talk about was the future transportation report made by the Governor's Commission. And we talked about it also a little bit in the capital investment and finance subcommittee. And so I mean, that seems to have been very well received. I mean, by the public. I mean, there was a big meeting hosted by MAPC, and actually, I take it back. Hosted by Transportation for Massachusetts, the organization that's now run by Chris Dempsey, and it was a big turnout. I mean, it was held over at MCLE, which is like Massachusetts.
Continuing legal education.
Thank you. I was not going to get that.
It's that little funny building that's by where Lockovers used to be.
Yeah, it was a really big, auditorium.
Yeah, they
do.
do.
That was full, and so there was a subset of the panel being on stage. I mean, most of the panel was there, and it seems like there's a really, at least there's going to be initially a push to try to make a lot of the recommendations policy, and I mean, a lot of effort went into it. I mean, one of the reasons I think it was very well received is that, I mean, there was a big emphasis on transit, and also for the first time, congestion pricing was kind of put on the table, and so that's interesting because I think it releases some possibilities for funding, perhaps, or certainly congestion mitigation. So the report is on the web. There are two sections to it, well, actually 3 parts. There's the executive summary, which is a good read itself. It's a fast read. And then there is the overall report, which is a fast read too. And then there is they call them the 5 books, which is essentially the appendix being, and it's a long read. It's a slow read, not a difficult read. It's just that the way it's laid out is each sentence is a hyperlink to a chart. And the charts, you can glance through the charts rapidly, but you really lose a lot if you do that. So you really need to spend some time with the charts, and so that's why it's a slow read. But it's very informative, and if nothing else, it lets you know what they're thinking, where they get their sources, and it's very well documented. Each chart will have a source with it, and the sources for the most part seem pretty good, and so I recommend reading it, and I'm certainly planning on talking with people to see just what kind of real impetus there is to make it policy. So one of the goals is to have Chris Dempsey from Transportation Massachusetts. He was actually part of the panel that we had on autonomous vehicles a couple of years ago. So I think it'd be good to have him talk to the group at large. I think I'm going to try and get the person from T for Mass, that's Transportation for Mass, to come to one of the capital investment and finance subcommittee meeting to just give us maybe some of the lowdown on what went on with creating the report, and just kind of prime her and T for Mass for meeting with us maybe sometime this summer, or maybe early, depending on what the impetus is for making some of the recommendations into policy. Another thing I'd like to do too is talk to Tricia Farley Bouvier. She was the representative along with Senator Jason Lewis, who did propose a bill in the last cycle of the legislature relating to autonomous vehicles. I want to see where that went. Also get a sense from her as to what her take on the report is, and maybe have a talk with William Strasberg. I think he is still going to be one of the co-chairs for the Joint Transportation Committee, or Joint Committee on Transportation, but I'm not certain on that. I haven't looked on the website to see what's happening with this current legislative cycle, but chances are he is going to be the chair, one of the co-chairs, at least the House co-chair. I forget who the Senate co-chair was.
Well, it was McGee, a couple of years ago, but he's Mayor Flynn now.
Right. So I'm not. I forget who replaced him. I saw the person who replaced him. I thought it was going to be Jason Lewis, but it was not Jason Lewis. It was someone else. And so I don't know if that person is the same person. Anyways, touch base with them, also see what their take is on it, and see what kind of impetus there is. Because if there is a real intent to make that policy, then that we should maybe gear our conversations more towards that, and how the team could do things that really fit in to that, from the capital to the operations side and so on. So that's it. That report came out in December, and so once again, I just suggest that people read it, because there's just a lot of information there. As a little bit of a tease, we are going to get some information on the bus project, at our next FOROC meeting. Wes Edwards is presented to us, and you may have seen the emails to me. They are doing some forums now, or public outreach.
Yes, so just to give people what we're seeing right now, so the website is going to be updated, the Better Bus Project website, which I think I find it on the MBTA website.
Sure.
It's going to be updated on this coming Monday with the list of the 47 proposals that we are coming up with to update routings or schedules or frequency or things of that nature. And I'm just checking it right now because I'm not so much involved in the public meeting aspect of it. I'll be going to public meetings, but I'm really involved in the setting up of it.
Sure.
Looks like we have the schedule for what we're calling the open houses. That's going to be where we are going out into stations.
Right.
And we have the training bus is going to be there. We'll sometimes be in the lobby of stations, I believe. We'll just be on site for whoever wants to come up and talk to us about it. Then there are also going to be community meetings. I don't think the schedule for those has come out quite yet, but they should be coming out soon. And that'll be kind of I don't know if any of you came to the first round of public meetings that we had for the Better Bus Project, but kind of an open house kind of format, quite honestly, where you have a big room and boards around the room and people can kind of come and talk about the different proposals. I think it's fine for me to say this, but in terms of those community meetings, there are going to be several other initiatives that are going to be participating with the Better Bus Project as part of that. So probably shouldn't say exactly what at this time.
Yeah, that's fine.
You're as documented as you get now.
But all that information should be coming out pretty soon, and I think it's going to be an interesting event for a lot of different aspects of the MBTA. For someone to come and hear a lot about what's going on and upcoming.
I'm sorry, Rob, when did you think that this was going to start to occur, the open houses and?
So the open house, everything's going to be starting next week.
Okay, terrific.
So yeah, so I gave a tease and Rob gave even more tease. This will be busy bus stuff.
Yeah.
I can't remember if you were talking about big capital or marketing operations.
It was marketing operations.
Oh, okay.
It was a confluence of the two.
Okay, because I remember one thing, don't mind me jumping in.
Oh, I'm
Okay,
fine.
I brought up during the meeting that the tunnel from the commuter rail platform to the subway, or vice versa,
right.
to and from commuter rail and subway at North Station is reopened, and it is significantly narrower than it used to be. In fact, in my personal opinion, shockingly narrower. I really fear it's going to become a safety concern, or a safety issue. I have concerns, because it's such a choke point. That being said, I'm sure a lot of thought went into it. I'm sure that it was reviewed by a lot of people who know more about it than I do. But being a regular rider on there, my reaction is, oh my God, this is not feeling safe. I've been watching the flow of people, and I'm going to present in the next subcommittee some photos and videos I've taken. I don't know if I can actually get in there with a measuring tape. That would be a little weird. I probably won't do that, but.
Oh, go for it, Stefan. Come on.
I've
Well,
nothing to go about having a tape measure.
I thought, if you do it, I'll video record it.
Okay.
We'll back you up.
and bail me out?
Yeah.
Yeah, right, that's
absolutely.
He's a rock vest,
You carry a clipboard.
I've got an MBTA orange safety thing with a T logo on it, but I don't want to wear that and pretend to.
No, just carry a clipboard, do a lot of check marks and
But
measure.
I can only imagine where you wear that.
So we did talk about that. So since your initial report to the subcommittee, 2 weeks ago, you've gone in and done some additional investigation?
Yes, I've been taking videos and photographs, mostly of people's backs, and trying not to get anybody identifiable in the frame, just to be respectful, even though it's MBTA public property and the photo policy about that kind of thing. But basically, it's looking like it might be okay, but I'm still concerned about a big event, concert letting out, marathon day, Halloween evening at the commuter rail. So maybe we can bring somebody into the subcommittee to talk about mitigating those issues.
So, are we still trying to get Bill Wolfgang for February? Or do we have someone else scheduled for February?
I don't recall having anybody else in mind for
so
February.
I will contact Bill.
I'm happy to, but keeping you as a single point of contact probably makes sense.
Yeah, fine.
But let me know.
I was just trying to remember. So.
Did you want West Edwards to come?
No, he's going to be at the Full Rock.
Oh, he is. So did you actually confirm that with him, or are you waiting for me to confirm that?
I was assuming that you were taking care of that.
I have spoken to Wes about it, but I will confirm.
Okay. all
For
right.
February?
Yeah, so what I'll do is
I would really
I'll
appreciate
check
that.
with you. So I wasn't confident, so yeah, I'll confirm. And yeah, thanks.
Yeah, either way, I mean, if we have Wes not at the full meeting, but the subcommittee, I mean,
I'd really like him for the full meeting.
yeah, for Wes. at the
For
full meeting.
February, yeah.
Yeah, if he's up for it, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we can get Bill for February, the subcommittee,
All right.
that'd be great too.
Sure.
Last I knew, Bill works out of 45 High Street, so that's his preference, because then he can just go right to the commuter rail and get out of town, literally and figuratively. So having Bill Wolfgang to a public meeting, probably not necessary, and probably would be a little more inconvenient for him.
All right.
Okay.
We also, just because it was interesting, you were very interested in it, we talked about how, in terms of scheduling, we planned to the 90th percentile of bus trips.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that was a fascinating point.
So I don't know if you want to tell the group what you learned.
I don't know if I could read it, count it as well as the first talk, the expert. Yeah. So if you don't mind, would you mind?
Sure. So
Okay.
it just, I forget exactly how it came up, but it came up that when we update run times, which we do periodically when we're looking to improve reliability, we get a full, in many cases, 100% sample of all trips that run over every single day, and we get it down to the time it takes to go between the different time points, or what we call segments along a different route. And with all that data, we're able to create distributions of the amount of time that it takes to run segment to segment. And when you have distributions, you can start talking about things like medians and percentiles and everything like that. So when we're programming our run times, what we do is we schedule the actual run time for trips to match what is the median travel times. And so that's the most common, the middle of the range, I should say, of what your scheduled time is. And then between that median, the 50th percentile, and the 90th percentile, that is what we schedule to be the minimum layover, recovery time, essentially, for every trip. So in kind of layman's term, one could say that we are giving enough time so that every 9 trips out of 10 should be able to start its next trip on time. And we kind of talked about how there's variability across the transit industry about what percentile they plan to. Some plan to the 95th percentile, some plan to the 85th or 75th. There's really no comprehensive agreement across the industry of what sort of percentile to plan to, but it's kind of getting down into the weeds, and it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and very enlightening. I mean, I thought it was particularly interesting that there's no FTA requirement for the percentile to be used. And now I'm forgetting, you described also typically the agencies who are going for the 75th percentile versus, say, 95th percentile, they tend to have characteristics of their routes that are on opposite sides of the spectrum, and I can't remember which is which. I remember you mentioned that, like
the longer routes tend to have more variability, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, you do tend to have greater variability with longer routes, or traveling through more congested conditions, and it's a conscious choice that if you are planning to the 95th percentile, say, you are putting in a lot more recovery time, which means you're giving more time to every single trip, which means you can offer fewer trips.
Yeah.
So there is a trade-off between frequency and reliability, and it's one of the things that we deal with on a daily basis when we're updating run times.
Well, that's interesting.
So do you break the day into rush hours and non-rush hours, or how many different types of travel times do you use?
So it really varies. When we have weekday, we have Saturday, we have Sunday in terms of set
Right.
days of
Right.
schedules. But within each of those days, whenever we're doing a runtime update, we can establish really as many time periods as we want to. General rule of thumb, we try to get not more than 10 time periods across the
That's
day,
a lot.
which is a lot already.
Yeah, I agree, it's
But-
a lot.
So there's a trade-off there with, the more exacting, the more time periods
Right.
you have, the more exact you can get down to the very detail. But everyone knows there's going to be variability no matter how much data we
Right.
have.
Right.
There's always a question of how fine you really want to get in terms
Right.
of your schedule.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that came up because, I was wondering about, the pilot that Arlington had done, and whether, the time that they had saved, in the, section of the route where they had piloted, really affected the consistency, the headways in the scheduled areas. So that's when you started talking to us about, what you just talked to us about. So anyways, our guests are here.
Yes. Hello and
Hi.
welcome. We're very excited to have you. I'm going to have to ask you, is it Laurel? Is it?
Paget Seekins.
Yes, I got the Seekins. How do you say the middle one?
Paget.
Paget. Okay, I didn't know if you did the French or not on that. And Anthony?
Yep.
Yep,
Anthony
I've
Jones.
met you before. So great, whenever you'd like to start to speak, we would love to have you. Just so you know, we're recording this and we're also streaming live right now.
Okay, yeah, I think that we were prepared to answer questions, so we can do a brief overview of AFC2 if you want, but there's many, many things to say, so we want to make sure it's as targeted to what you're interested in as possible. So if there's overview questions, then we can speak to that.
Well, speaking for myself, I think the last official update we got on AFC 2.0 was from David a little less than a year ago. I think it was like April or May.
It must have been after May, because Anthony was here and stuff.
Yeah, Anthony.
Yeah, so I mean, anything really significant that's changed since we had him here last at that time, and that would be a good thing to lead off with, in my
I don't
opinion.
think, nothing's significantly changed, we're just further into implementation
Okay.
of the project.
Great.
And so we're working, so I think that there's two things. One, so if you're familiar with what the project is and the sort of varying aspects of it, then we don't have to go through that. We can focus more on sort of the policy input that we're working on, if that's.
Yeah, the policies what we're interested in.
Okay.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, so we have sort of 4 buckets of sort of policy work streams that we're working on currently. And so I can sort of give you an update on what those are and sort of the timeline on sort of the public involvement we're doing on each one of those buckets. The first bucket is updating our privacy policy. So the MBTA privacy policy is update. And as we implement AFC2, there'll be sort of more sort of customer data we'll be collecting on with it. And, technology has changed since the last time we wrote the policy. And so we're currently updating it. So we're sort of doing some sort of internal work, sort of catalog all the ways that we're collecting customer data, looking at sort of records retention laws and public records laws, and trying to sort of square out sort of what the sort of regulations are versus policy best practice, looking at some other agencies, and then we'll be sort of starting later in the spring to sort of be having some public conversations around that and sort of talking through sort of draft policy over the summer is my guess on that. Timelines could change. But that's the first bucket of work. The second bucket is around access to fare vending machine, point of sale locations and fare cards. And so as you're probably familiar with the project, we're taking cash payments off board buses and vastly increasing our point of sale network for adding cash to trolley cards, or your account essentially in the new system. So whether you use a trolley card or you use your phone, or you can use a contactless credit card. Presumably with a contactless credit card, you'll not need access to the point of sale network. But We're sort of working on that piece now of sort of where those points of sale locations need to be, and doing outreach on that. Really focused on, so there's a set of standards that the vendor has to meet around sort of based on ridership data, to make sure that like ends of trips are met with a place you can add money to your account. What we're focusing in on right now is really focusing on the places where we think they're going to be most used by who's using cash or will be using cash in the future. Because the new system will vastly improve access to payment for anyone who has access to online banking, a credit card, debit card, because you'll be able to much smoothly than currently add money to your account online, or through a call center if you want to call and add money, or through an app, set up your account, set up recurring payments, like anything that you auto reload, anything you want to do with that. But so we're really focusing on outreach and sort of talking through to communities who are cash users, seniors with disabilities, folks with limited English, and youth, to sort of really focus in on like what payment options work for them and how to make sure that the new point of sale network will work for them. So that's the outreach that we're currently working on, and we're also going to be sort of doing some we're doing some municipal outreach as well, sort of start working with the cities, since we're going to have to work with them on actually placing the fare vending machines in at bus stops if they're not a retail location. And then the other piece of that we're working on, starting to work on now, sort of making sure that we're sort of improving our program for sort of social service agencies and other people who give out free Charlie tickets now, that they'll have access to sort of like a bulk sales portal to order those cards. So we're sort of working through with like those types of community organizations, sort of talking through like what that will look like for them. So that's the second bucket that we're currently working on. The third is around fare inspections and proof of payment, since we're going to all-door boarding, which is a huge service improvement in how fare inspections are going to work. So we'll be really kicking off that public outreach later in the spring. And we know there's a lot of concerns around how that will work, and so we're really going to be targeting again that effort to sort of talking to communities that are most likely to be impacted by those changes. And then the fourth bucket, which is probably what everyone thinks about when they think about a new fare collection system, is what are the fares going to be? But this project really is just like opening up opportunity to change the fare structure in ways that our current system limits us. It is not sort of deciding any of those things. What we are doing is building a new model that will allow us to better analyze the revenue ridership impacts of potential changes. And so we're working on that piece right now. And so likely, like later at the end of this year, we might start the conversations around sort of what types of things should we be modeling, what should we be comparing, what different sort of fare structure are people interested in. But any of those changes would not take effect until any like major fare structure changes wouldn't take effect until 2021 when the system is fully implemented. We are sort of working on the sort of like what are the short-term changes we need to make to our existing tariff rules just to implement it at AMC2. A lot focuses around the commuter rail and sort of how do we integrate the commuter rail into the bus subway payment system. So there's some sort of policy decisions that might be discussed earlier than that that we'll be discussing with our board. But any like major changes likely will not take place until 2021 when the system is fully implemented.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Well, first of all, do we just dive in with questions? I mean, how?
If that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's my
Okay, great.
purpose, so.
Okay, cool. Well, right off the bat, because you mentioned the time frame, I'm drawing a blank as to whether by statute or just by convention or for simplicity's sake, the implementation of policy and such things is bound to the fiscal year, July to June, or could, you mentioned 2021. Does that mean that there'll be a big push to get things for July 1st, 2021, or does it not really have to line up?
So by statute, we can only do fare increases every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
The July date is our fiscal year,
Mm-hmm.
and that is just a matter of sort of convenience, both I think from the perspective of our budgeting cycle, but also we try to sort of help other people who need to budget around our fares sort of have advance notice on it. But I think the reason I said 2021 is more that the full implementation of the AFC2 won't be done until 2021 in terms of the replacement of all the gates, So even after like everyone's transitioned on and is using the new fare media, like the new Charlie cards, there'll still be work we need to do to get all of the hardware switched over. So when we're sort of talking about the full implementation of the project, 2021 is the date that we're working on, that we're working towards for full implementation. And so my expectation is that there'll be some sort of changes that people will experience when they sort of transition over to the new Charlie cards. But we were not gonna like implement time of day pricing or anything sort of radically different until the project's fully implemented.
And that's calendar year 2021, not fiscal year 2021.
In calendar year 2021.
Do you have a sense of whether that's early 2021, late?
That what, that any like.
So when you say it's going to be implemented in 2021,
So-
are we thinking like January 2021 or
So
December?
implemented in terms of the technology?
Yes.
Or implemented, the technology will be at some point early, hopefully, like in the first half of
Okay.
2021, I'm not really sure. But that any like major fare structural changes, my guess is the earliest would happen would be July 2021, just because of that sort of
Right.
fiscal year
Right.
budgeting.
I have a suggestion that you take in tourists into account, also tourists who don't speak even a common language like Thai or something, and then also people who come from either other parts of Massachusetts or from Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine. They're gonna drive in, visit somebody, and then I don't know how you do it, that's your job.
Yeah.
But I would love it if more, some tourists are very savvy, they go to websites, but other tourists just walk off the plane and.
Yeah, no, one of the other sort of user groups that we are looking through sort of occasional users, so
Right.
whether that's people who are coming in for a ball game or visitors, so we've been meeting with Massport and other folks. So yeah, I did mention that, but we are also sort of thinking through that use case of like the occasional rider and how it's.
Also, people come by boat. Their cruise boats come in, and they could take the Civil Line if they had a card and money on it.
I have a couple things. I've noticed lately there's a lot of buses where the cash boxes aren't working. And I don't think it's bus driver discretion. I think they're just not working. So are you tracking the percent of those that don't work, and what's the trend?
So that's not, so that's the existing fare
Yeah.
collection system is not this department, but it is a little bit tricky to track that, but I do think there's probably some data on that I just haven't seen.
Okay, well,
Just to play out that specific point, is the question, is there a hurry that we're essentially, we're going to limp along, you know, the existing system is going to slowly fall apart?
yeah, that's what's motivating my question. I mean, I don't mind if I see one a day, but it seems to be getting more frequent.
That's right. You don't want to overinvest in something that you know is going away.
And we've got a
in
couple
2
years yet to go,
Yeah,
so
that is
the trend does not look too good
legitimate
from
concern.
my, very casual observation, okay? The second thing is about enforcement. And I'm gonna end up with buses, which is where my real question is, but, different places have different cultures of paying, right? And paying for your trip. I was in Germany on a train, high-speed train. Police caught a young woman who hadn't paid. It was very tense situation for everybody in that train car. Barcelona, the light rail has tap on. If you tap your card and it doesn't work, a couple stops later, usually public safety officers get on. Not as tense as in Germany. In Basel, Switzerland, there's no checking. The Swiss seem to pay almost every time. They don't lock their bikes downtown. They don't get stolen. So I'm wondering about bus enforcement in the long run, because I don't think the bus drivers have so much to do. I don't think they can be asked to kind of enforce the payments. And I think people will test it. I think it's natural for whether it's teenagers in some locations or other people that may not have a lot of extra money to just see what happens if they get on and don't have a way of paying. So given that I don't think the bus driver can really be left to be responsible for that, how will you develop a plan for dealing with that?
Yeah, so, the change will be that it won't be the bus driver anymore that's responsible for their inspections. We're still working on what the plan will be.
Yeah.
But the concept is that there'll be some people who will be, MBTA employees who will be doing that job. But we're still working on sort of what that looks like. But the idea being that's been implemented in other cities is sort of a random-based inspection where you get on and they have a device that can sort of tell, your temperature.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, I think the bus drivers on average show very good judgment in these kinds of situations. I have no complaints about the bus drivers in that regard, but I just think it can't fall to them. And, there are different places where the teenagers pay and some places where they don't pay and some places where 1 in 5 doesn't pay. And, that's kind of just accepted as the norm.
Well,
and it's not just teenagers. I don't want to be.
Most teenagers in Boston have a card that's paid for by Boston Public Schools.
Yeah, well, I'm not usually in Boston when I'm on the
Okay.
buses.
Okay. But yeah, so we're thinking about how to do it in a way that is equitable and not discriminatory. So equitable in the sense of like everyone is expected to pay the same
Right.
amount, but then pay their fare. But then equitable in the sense that it's not discriminatory, and then efficient. It's an efficient use of resources for the MBTA to do it. So those are sort of the things that we're working on. We're sort of going to roll out in the spring kind of a much larger kind of like outreach strategy on this to really get input on how it's going to work. There's some legislative changes that we potentially need. So there's a bunch of pieces on this. There's a lot of sort of internal and external work that still needs to be done.
And one last question. Are you like surveying the current bus drivers? Because they're the ones with the knowledge on this stuff.
I've definitely had some good conversations with bus drivers about it. Yeah.
Okay, great.
And some of that layover time Rob was talking about. But yeah, so we are trying to get input, I think, from a sort of wide variety of people, and bus drivers is on our list of folks to talk to.
Okay, thank
What's
you.
that equitable enforcement element that I'm really interested in being in? Yeah, because I mean, that I think is going to be, where, you're going to get the loudest public response, and so on. So, I mean, I guess I'm interested in as much detail as you can give about how you are developing that, because to the extent that you reach out to the right people, I mean, then at least you can have them on board, because almost anything you do will probably get some negative response. And I think that if the legislature isn't brought up to speed before you roll this out, then you take the risk of.
Yeah,
So
we have a pretty sort of, I think, comprehensive. We're sort of putting together the plan now, which is why I can't sort of speak to it in more detail, but like we have a good sense that it's going to be like a huge project, and that we're going to need a lot of stakeholder and public buy-in on it. And I think one of the things we're looking at now is just sort of like best practices in other agencies and sort of trying to learn from peers. And so there's a bunch of different pieces that we're working on. I think, so one of the pieces that we're working on is sort of what data do we need to collect to be able to analyze it afterwards. So like what do we need to put into place in sort of the technology side to make sure we're collecting the data to be able to analyze whether it's equitable after it's in place. So that's another piece of what we're working on is with sort of my other hat at the MBTA sort of around data analytics. So we were sort of thinking about in the front end, like as we design the system, like are we making sure we're able to collect the data to be able to analyze, that some bus routes aren't going to be oversampled, that some communities aren't being oversampled, or we're not, that there isn't being too much discretion in who gets given like a citation for not paying. So definitely that's a piece of it as well.
Sorry. No, please go.
Three things, but somebody else jump in if I'm hogging too much time here. First, I want to commend you for establishing an entire work stream dedicated to privacy. For folks who haven't dealt with any of that before, it's bigger than a bread box. It's going out, understanding laws, both state and in federal laws and trying to craft a policy that aligns your organization with that. So and that, you know, interpreting privacy laws isn't something that's in the MBTA, you know, not a day-to-day activity. So to realize that that's a separate thing, and you have to go about that carefully as you're expanding that, especially in today's world. I appreciate the work you're doing there. Second item, you mentioned briefly about how contractually the company has to put access to point of sale at a certain level, and you said you're doing some separate work, working with local communities. I think one of our takeaways, I can't remember if we looked at the Senate subcommittee or we did it following the last meeting, I think it was in one of the subcommittees, is we just had some concerns that there are ways for the vendor to come in and hit their target that don't necessarily match to the reality that's on the ground in Chelsea or pick another town where you have, or even if you go a little bit farther out. So can you speak a little bit more, expand on what you were saying in terms of, do you think you'll put vending machines in places that go above and beyond what the vendor has to contractually do, and will you help guide their process so they're not just hitting a number and not achieving the reality of being out there?
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're doing, is that, that is based on ridership data, so it's sort of a coverage principle for everyone that they have to hit.
And you have to have that as a baseline. I'm not saying don't hit that. I'm just saying that you have to add human.
Yes, so what we're doing sort of on top of that is really looking at the data of where we think people are most likely to be using cash. Because as I mentioned before, I think the vast majority of people who have access to debit card, credit card, online access will probably be using those sorts of ways to have money to their accounts. Since that's sort of the trend in most types of transactions that people are currently using. So we're really focusing on looking at the data of where people are currently adding cash, senior and tap card usage, where people currently are traveling where they never go to a rail station. So where there's sort of bus-only users who are never going to a place where there's a vending machine. So really sort of trying to isolate that data in order to put that on top of the locations that that is required in what we call the quantity standards, but the standards in the contract, to find out if there are holes. And then if there are holes, then we'll sort of use that to prioritize additional machines above and beyond what is in the contract. So that's
the environmental justice community is going to give a lot of pushback, and mostly because of the last AFC.
Yeah.
And so I think it behooves you, if you wanted to get it done without a lot of marching and stamping and all that kind of thing, to go out and deal with it now, or whenever you're ready, go out and deal with the different groups.
Yeah, so we've had, I would say, what do you say, Anthony, we've done focus groups at Boston Housing Authority associations, we've done our apartments, we're going to Malden Senior Center this week.
Community organizations.
I would say check out all the African American community organizations in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan, and somehow, if you can't meet with them, send them stuff, just get them on board to avoid. I wish I was George Mitchell. He had wonderful things with the Irish thing. You're going to need something, because I'm hearing we want to be able to pay with cash on board. So you're already getting pushback. At least I've heard. You probably haven't heard it, but
we've heard it. Yeah, no, we've heard it.
So you got to diffuse that before. Yeah.
And now I'm remembering the other thing we talked about something months ago is the concern that you would on a map, if you're trying to hit this 90% number, that there may be a Dunkin' Donuts that's half a block down the street from a bus stop, but there's a vending machine there at the bus stop today. But theoretically, you can take that away because there's a point of sale half a block down the street. Half a block doesn't seem like much in terms of the computer model. It's going to look just fine. It looks like you have one-to-one coverage, but all of a sudden, if you take out a machine and you replace it with somebody having to go online, wait in line with everybody getting their morning coffee, that experience of the rider, even though statistically he's only 500 yards of walking, is a dramatically different experience for that rider in terms of trying to load up their Charlie card.
I think that there will be a one-to-one replacement of all of the existing machines.
Okay.
So we're anticipating a vast increase in the number of both the retail locations as well as fair vending machines.
So is it safe to call the increase in retail, so if you replace one-to-one machines, any access at a point of sale at a local bodega or what have you is above and beyond the replacement of the one-for-one, or?
We'll have, I wouldn't say, so one-for-one in terms of locations. I can't say that's going to be the exact same number of fair vending machines at Broadway Station today as there is.
Okay.
But there will be fair vending machines at every place where there currently are.
Okay.
And then, although maybe there's a few, I might take that back. There's like one in the lobby of this building. I can't guarantee that that will be there.
We'll hold it to the exception.
There's also, one of our least used fair vending machines is at Fenway Park, fun fact. But yeah, all of the locations that have fair vending machines now will have them in the future. There will be ones at Dudley, there's Dudley ones done Dudley now. What this quality standards and the initial work we're doing is to supplement that, to add additional locations. Yeah. And we have pretty limited retail network now.
And just to add on to what Laurel's saying about, where there are currently fair vending machines in the current system, where also the current quantity standards require that if, for example, there's a change of grade between a busway and a station, there's a requirement that there also has to be a machine at the busway. So the quantity
busway, of course, tells you.
Yeah, so the quantity standards outline, in many cases, specific additional locations where there need to be machines or points of sale that are above that kind of overall coverage requirement that you were referring to, so the 95, 98%. And so there are specific line items for machines that are laid out, and that 95, 98% is really kind of that coverage, that general coverage principle, so that we can ensure that there's a general distribution of machines across the network. And that's then we're doing the work with the data analysis and the public input to figure out how we supplement it even further.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, you just got me thinking, and we'll hash this out more during the subcommittee, but we're talking about a quantitative analysis of fair vending locations. You've raised a very good point that there is a qualitative
Every once in a while.
aspect to it, where we should hash this out more in the subcommittee, but I'm just sort of off the cuff thinking, well, could you like assign some data values to sort of the quality of the experience regarding the speed of the transaction? And a fair vending machine would be 10 out of 10 for the fastest, because it's you and the machine. At Dunkin' Donuts, where it's a busy spot and that's also a fair vending location, maybe you rate that a 3. I mean, somehow we might be able to actually put some quantitative numbers onto what's a qualitative experience of that transaction.
I'm not sure that we're trying to actually put numbers on it, but that's one of the things we're really getting at in the focus groups that we're doing with users, is really getting at the which of the ways that people can pay in the future will work for them, how often are they adding money to their card, so getting to understand the customer experience directly from people who are actually going to be impacted by that is one of the things that we're working on. We're not exactly putting numbers to people's experience quite yet, but I do think that's really important. That sort of qualitative feedback from people who currently pay in cash is a very important piece of work that we're doing.
Anecdotally, what are you hearing from people when you talk to them?
I'll answer first, and then Anthony, who's been to way more meetings than me as well. But one of the things that actually struck me at we did a focus group at Hassan Apartments, is that where it was? Down in Hyde Park, for it's a senior Boston Housing Authority apartments. Is that when I started explaining this, everyone there was like, oh yeah, that's how we pay for the ride. So this sort of system of not paying in cash on board and sort of having an account and putting your money in ahead of time is how people who use the ride are familiar with paying for the ride. So it was not anything new for them, which is something that I hadn't in my head thought of yet.
That is interesting.
And so that was the thing where I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's a big community that we were sort of worried about actually is familiar with this type of system, and hopefully we'll actually be making it easier for ride users to use the fixed route as well. So that was one of the things that I sort of took away from it, of sort of an experience that people had that I thought it was going to be hard to explain. And they were like, yeah, no, we got it. We're good. We know exactly what you're talking about.
And I would just add also kind of getting to your point, one of the things that we're hearing is kind of what the trade-offs are between like retail locations and machines, because you mentioned that like a fair vending machine, okay, we'll give that a 10 out of 10, but there were some people that were saying, well, like, I would actually prefer not to go to a fair vending machine because my neighborhood, like I might not be super comfortable at the bus stop, adding money, adding cash to this machine. I'd rather go to a retail, so I'd rather go to a retail location. Even though it has less hours and I would have to walk a little further, I would rather do that because I would feel safer. So just kind of hearing those sorts of things is also
That's also very interesting. That is.
Are they mutually exclusive where a retailer in the conventional sense, like a Dunkin' Donuts or a Stop and Shop, whatever, is not going to have the machinery that a standalone outdoor fair vending machine would have? Or will there be a little overlap where you might be able to have a fully machine-based fair purchase interaction, but it happens to be at a Stop and Shop or a Dunkin' Donuts?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't think we've sort of conceptually thought of that.
Okay.
I think that we've been more thinking about the retail as being sort of integrated in, so you can just go and like when you're doing the rest of your shopping, you just pay at the same time. So there's the technology is really integrated into sort of their existing sales cash register system, point of sale system. I think there might be places where we consider having fair vending machines that are indoors. So that might be something that ends up being one of the things that comes out of sort of the locations. And one of the things we're really actually coordinating around is with, as well as there's a project here to sort of think through at the MBTA, think through like bus stop shelter, like bus stop shelters and bus stop amenities. So we're coordinating with them as well to think through like how do we sort of make sure that like it's a bus stop that people are going to be going to because it also has a shelter or some other seating, whatever else. So that's another piece of it is like how do we put them in places where there's some congregate people so people feel safe because there's like more people there.
Yeah, and just thinking about your suggestion, one difficulty is trying to figure out, so the retailers have to have some sort of incentive to be able to be doing these transactions. And that, I think, that incentive and that system is run through kind of like a retail point of sale, which is kind of a separate thing from the machines themselves. And so kind of trying to figure out how that would work if we had a machine instead of it was actually going through the retail point of sale would be something.
Well, but I do think we're thinking about sort of community partners and how, like, who aren't a retailer or we could sort of partner with community partners.
Because I think it's also hard if you're talking about a small store. You're not talking to Stop and Shop, you're talking the corner store in the neighborhood. They can't give up that kind of real estate.
Exactly. And so that's actually, sorry, I see.
No, I do, but do you?
I'll tell you
Oh,
about
I'm
this.
sorry. I didn't realize.
No.
Okay.
After this.
But that's one of the big benefits over the current system is that currently, if you want to be you want to sell Charlie cards, you have to have a machine that's about this big that's sitting on your counter that can only do this one thing. That's taking up a lot of real estate. And so in the new system, there will be a couple different versions of kind of integrated, but one is like a small point of sale device, one of those Clover things that kind of rotate back and forth, or integration into their existing point of sale system. And so it's much easier in terms of kind of equipment to be able to become one of the retailers.
I should have thought of that, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Just as a matter of
I think Brian-
incentive.
There was
Sorry.
You can,
No.
I'm sure. I was just going to ask, as your team is going through the process, looking at things, looking at policies and whatnot, is there another transit agency that you guys are looking at as a model or a benchmark or things like that that's kind of guiding the whole process?
I think that, so I mean, obviously lots of folks look at London, because they have a very similar system to the one that we're implementing. But in terms of, we're sort of thinking about different pieces of it, there's different sort of best practices. So in terms of all-door boarding, that's something that was done in San Francisco a number of years ago. So we're talking through with them, how that experience went for them. So there's that connection. In terms of sort of the more like fare structures, our sort of constellation of services is much more complicated than almost any other agency in the U.S. in terms of having commuter rail and ferry and light rail and bus and subways. Yeah, express bus, and all of the things that we have. And so there's a little bit of a, like we can learn stuff from a few other agencies, like Vancouver, but they only have one commuter line. So like, we're in some ways sort of unique in the sort of complexity of our fare structure, where it's hard to find an exact fare. We're looking at TriMet's privacy policy, because it looked like a really good example. So we are sort of in each individual thing finding other peer agencies to talk to.
And just one more question. So, like, today I think some of the regional transit agencies in Mass integrate with the existing fare card collection, whatever you call it. Is that a plan going forward? I think that was on the one down the Cape. I could use my Charlie card. Will I be able to do that in the future everywhere in Mass, or some locations, or?
So that's obviously a decision that's up to the RTAs. So we're, like, the vendor, Cubic, is working with the RTAs to sort of explain the system and see if they would want to join. The MBTA can't say you have to join, but we're setting up a system where they can join. I don't think they'll be up and running by day one, since they haven't, there's like a lead time to, you know, once they decide to join, for it all to be sort of built out. But I do think that probably some of the RTAs will take advantage of that. Sort of had some conversations with some of them. I think that one of the sort of future sort of values that I see in AFC2, and I did a presentation on this to the board, I think it was in November, of like the new mobility marketplace to the FMCB, is really thinking about.
The one that did that.
Yeah.
Nice. I like that. I want to talk to you.
So yeah, in partnership with Evan Rhodes, our director of revenue, and David Buckschafter at the time, but really sort of thinking through AFC2 as kind of an operating system for sort of plug-in for other mobility options as well. And so sort of how we do potential fare integration, this is not obviously in 2021, this is sort of like moving forward in the future, but like how do we set ourselves up both with the technology, but also with the policies, to be able to think about sort of the future of transportation and how we sort of plug in other mobility options into AFC2 as like a platform for sort of fare integration across not just RTAs, but like other potential mobility providers. And I think this is another reason why sort of I'm thinking about the point of sale network and sort of taking the decision to pay cash off the buses, is that one of the other sort of values of having that point of sale network where people can add money to their transportation account that is, you know, run by the MBTA but potentially allows them other options, is that it allows people who are cash users access to those other services as well. Since many of the other sort of like new mobility options out there are very much based on smartphone, credit card usage, that part of what we're doing is sort of thinking about equity in transportation beyond just the MBTA, and how do we, as sort of like the cash economy sort of becomes more sort of compartmentalized among some communities, that we make sure they're not left out of all these other things that are happening in transportation. So that's sort of the like long-term vision that we're sort of trying to work through as we sort of roll out AFC2. Is sort of how do we think about, you know, what is the MBTA's role in transportation in a more long term?
Excellent.
Karen?
Oh, yes, one incentive you might use in getting retail vendors, I mean, thinking of banks, is give them free advertising. So if they're willing to put the machines in there wherever, those beautiful ads in the subway, in the buses, give them, you know, make it an equitable thing, give everybody an incentive.
I'm glad you mentioned banks, because a few minutes ago I was just thinking, gee, what do we have around here, less so now, but what do we have that's a machine that takes cash and does something with it electronically? There's ATMs. I mean, not all ATMs are deposit enabled, but my goodness, I mean, piggybacking on your idea, yeah, if there was some way of incentivizing the bank to turn their existing ATM into like a fare vending cash transaction station.
That's brilliant.
I know it's not a perfect plan. It wouldn't work for everybody everywhere.
They're encouraging people to use their phones too, because I think they want to get rid of those devices, you know, because, you know, they are cumbersome, they mechanical, it's like, you know, every time you like go, it's like, why don't you like use your phone to cash your check, deposit your check. Yeah. But I'm glad you brought Kissimmee out, me thinking, because the future transportation is all about that, you know, and it's like, you know, it means not only interface with your bank, but like, you know, Venmo and PayPal and whatnot, you know, and I found it interesting when we were reading, you know, about the report that like for TNCs, apparently the black people use TNCs, you know, black young people use TNCs more than almost any other group. I was surprised at that because I would have thought it would have been, you know, your maybe, you know, not very young, but like,
I'm just joking with Anthony, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would have thought you might have been, you know, like maybe, you know, folks working down in the Seaport District, you know, and so yeah.
I think that there's some ways that that there are limitations of the taxi system that need taxis very unavailable in, you know, Dorchester and Roxbury.
Right.
So some of what's changing is sort of the access to those types of services that previously were limited.
But when it comes to people wanting to use cash on buses, it's like they can't use it on the subway. Now, so they already have a system where it's like, you know, the cash isn't working. You gotta use a medium, you know, to get on. And also, it's like there are going to be other places, other aspects of which we are going to tell the individual, you're going to have to give up some convenience, in order to make this system work better for the group. And as part of the group, it's going to work better for you too. So it may take you a little more time to put your cash, put cash in your card, but you're going to get to where you're going faster. And so it's like, you know,
it's sort of individual versus collective.
Yes, but as long as we're being equitable in the way that we provide that access, and going out of our way, you know, to make it possible for someone to do it. It's like, well, just because you don't want to do it doesn't mean the rest of us are going to suffer, you know, because you don't want to do it. It's like, you know, that's going to be one of other things that you don't want to do, you have to do.
And just to be clear, that's kind of something that we've been hearing from the public as well. Right. Is that like when we kind of explain, you know, you won't be able to do this anymore. When we get people that ride the bus a lot, they're understanding like, wow, that's going to be great because I don't have to stand out in the rain while someone's waiting to add cash at the fare box.
Right.
And so there are people that understand that. People, you know, that get the bus at Dudley, for example, and say like, there's a machine over there, but you're doing it at the bus. Like, why are you doing this? So there are lots of people that understand. So I think it's just making sure that we're kind of doing our due diligence and kind of pulling from a lot of different perspectives to make sure that we kind of get the point of sale network right, so that people that need to use cash and want to use cash still can in fairly convenient places. But I think that general ridership, people that ride in the bus really understand that it is going to be a benefit.
I just want to take us in a completely different direction. Looking at our subway stops in particular, we spent a lot of time talking about buses and point of sale. Are there any opportunities, or is at least anybody looking for opportunities to move fare gates within stations? I'm not saying there's a lot out there. These aren't giant. Some stations there's pretty obvious you got to put it here. But I'm just curious if anybody's looking at.
Yes, the new fare gate arrays might be in slightly different locations. There's like engineering studies going on right now because it is an opportunity since we are replacing the fare gates. So part of it is going to make them more accessible. So there's like wider gates and hopefully more gates that are accessible. There's like also a few like random like exits, and so there's like some sort of work that we're doing to try and figure out how to sort of put the fare gates in ways that improve service. Is there like a particular location you think is like doesn't make sense?
Yeah, I mean I could go through a couple of different random locations. I ride the Mattapan high-speed line, so I have to make obligatory comment on that every meeting. I've always, at Ashmont Station, it's always driven me nuts that you can't go directly from the trolley to the red line. That should all be behind the fare. It's not the biggest deal in the world. It's just you're really on the map. You're still on a red line. I'm on
the bigger issue we have at Ashmont is that back entrance on the.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So we're trying to work that one out, because where you have to like go back in to get out on the other side.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a few places like that where we are sort of trying to figure out how to make that work, and it's whether it's gates or whether it's like the gate knows that you just got off and is able to like not charge you again when you try to get off the other side. I'm not sure, like, so right now.
Yeah, I feel like if you move the gates there on that one side, you could find a way to go up and down without,
Yeah,
to that
there's
back
a-
door without, and solve the trolley
There's
problem.
a separate study going on about sort of the future of Connecticut line, so I think once that's done, we'll be able to more sort of sync up with what that would look like. Because right now, so with AFC2, given the age and the amount of hand trolleys, we're not able to install the equipment on the vehicle, so there's gonna be platform, some tab on the platforms on the Mattapan line. If at some point in the future we have sort of vehicles that have more modern electronics, we'd be able to potentially.
Don't, please don't, please don't. Please don't, just say they're gonna stay exactly the same.
So you said the correct answer is just go back to free on the trolley. That's all. That solves all problems. Good, okay.
Okay, good. We'll pretend that never happened.
The only, glad we all agree. Let's
Yeah,
make
we
the
all
trolley
agree.
free and it's
Okay,
good.
okay,
The other random spots I can think of are like, at Kenmore for Red Sox games, there's big gates that they open up at Red Sox times to let people through. I'd hate to see those taken out because, oh, nice big wide gates, but there's only 3 gates and it takes 4 hours to get onto a green line after a Red Sox game because you forgot to put that come on through, swing open gate.
Yeah, well, one of the things we're doing, if you really want to get in the weeds on this, is updating all of our sort of egress studies for all the stations based on, because we're replacing the gates, so we're looking at all the data again of like, what is the like max possible flow of the stations we can imagine to be able to plan for it, yeah.
Nice. Cool.
So this is actually the worst. This is the opposite. This is that egress is actually. Well, I guess it's getting on, not getting off. And then last year, just being the green line. Any plans for outdoor gates anywhere stations above ground?
Not that I know of, in addition to the ones that already exist.
Can't think of a good candy off like Riverside maybe.
Riverside is gated.
It is gated. Okay. It's been a long time since I've been out that far.
Long,
Long before? Yeah, that's.
Wasn't the original GLX design including paid and unpaid areas? I know that the original design was scrapped after the.
I think the original design
building.
was, but I think the
Yeah.
new ones, there might be one gated station in the new design.
Oh, okay.
I can't remember.
We can look into that. That's a good subcommittee thing. But,
Yeah, so far both Longwood.
Which one?
Wow.
Oh, I was thinking on the D line, you're right, it could be up by the hospitals. Yeah.
On the point of the gates, correct me if I'm wrong, but while the space to go through a gate is actually going to be bigger, the total amount of space per gate is actually going to be smaller because of the way that the doors
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
and closing, so you're actually going to be able to fit more
More
gates
gates, yeah.
than we currently have.
Yeah, this way was as opposed to the.
Yeah.
Yes,
this is another policy question. I don't want to change topics.
feel free.
Okay. We were mentioning earlier about Germany and sort of the law enforcement aspect of it. It's not exactly in your wheelhouse, but are there elements of the legislation which allows transit police to give tickets that you don't have to answer if it's something you don't want to say on the record or like politically sensitive, whatever. But I mean, do you have like a wish list of, oh, if only the legislature would enable X, Y, and Z, then we'd be able to implement better policy for enforcement? Because we can push that. I mean, if there's areas where you guys can't, let us know. We can do that.
We are working on a legislative proposal.
Okay.
To address some of the, so there's 2 issues. There's the sort of who can ask people if they've paid, and right now actually the police have that power, but also there's some MBTA employees who do as well, and we're just trying to expand that. And then the other piece is around the fines, and so that's the other piece that we're looking into and potentially going to be recommending legislative. So yeah, I would expect there to be potentially some legislative language sometime this year around some changes.
Yeah, along those lines of fines, I've been hearing a lot on the radio about poor people who can't pay $600 fine and end up in jail I think even if the fine were $10, if the person has no money, has no friends, is homeless,
Yeah.
he or she
Yeah.
cannot pay that $10. So somehow they can't be put in jail for.
No, yeah, no, so it's not criminal.
Oh,
Currently in Massachusetts law, it's a civil offense. And there is some language around not being able to, in the state law currently around not being able to renew your driver's license if you don't pay the fine.
Right.
And then,
Well, you have to have money to renew your driver's license, so if you don't have $10, you can't.
yeah, so that's what's currently in state law. I don't think we're necessarily recommending changing that, but we are sort of, I think, thinking through potentially sort of what does the adjudication process look like, of like how you appeal and what that looks like. So that's another part of that project that will be sort of rolling out later this year. Sort of, it's not just about the inspection piece, but it's also about sort of the adjudication that happens afterwards, making sure that people have the ability to appeal properly, and that we have the data to
If some of these people won't be even know the court date, I mean, you've got to close up every loophole, because I have a garden in the Fenway, and we have druggies, homeless, everything, and they're barely surviving. If they get on the tee and run into trouble,
Yes,
they get a
that's
court appointed
a separate issue that, will sort of intersect with this particular issue, but clearly there's like sort of larger concerns around
What
that,
are
just
the
not being-
fair evasion fines right now?
Currently in state law, it is $100 for the first offense, $200 for the second offense, and $600 for the third offense.
Has anybody been, have you looked at, has anybody been fined?
So right now, the only people who really, so because of the way our system works, effectively, we can't do proof of payment, because you can be
No,
on.
I
yeah.
realize that, but has
So-
anybody?
Right, I'm getting to that. So
Oh, sorry.
our the MBTA Police Department are the only people who really sort of
Right.
actively write fair citations currently. I don't have the number at the top of my head of how many citations they wrote last year. It was definitely in like a couple in the thousands range.
Oh,
Oh,
so
that
they really
really
did?
is.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
I
Don't know any
we have,
more
like,
info?
how many millions of trips every year? I
No,
don't
no,
that
but I've
mean-
never seen, it doesn't matter. Do you know which, was it on commuter rail, was it all through the system?
Mostly it's subway, because so the way that,
Subway.
the way that it works is they have to see someone sort of in the act of evading
Right.
effectively.
Right.
Because once you're on a bus, you would have always paid cash at the fare box, you have no receipt, you
Right,
have no
right,
payment.
right.
Yeah.
I've seen occasionally, where they'll get somebody when they're tailgating or drifting or whatever you call it, when they
Yeah.
drafting, what do they
Yeah.
call it?
Yeah.
Occasionally, you'll see on the news that they caught somebody.
Good.
Well, we were just talking, on the email list, we were virtually talking about perhaps we should have Chief Green visit us. It's been a while. I mean, I don't think we've had anybody from Transit Police join us in the amount of time since Joe O'Connor was chief. I was just thinking about this. I was at an event yesterday where I was sitting right next to Chief Green, and I was chatting with him, and I think we'll invite him to a future meeting and talk about such things.
Well, we have Laurel and Anthony on the schedule till 6:35. I know that you did start early, but does anybody have anything else?
I have some tiny things.
Yeah, bring up the tiny.
First off, when you mentioned diversity of systems served, Sydney, I think, has the same provider as you, and they have, their system is really great, I think, as a kind of amateur user. They have ferries in their system, and you might ask them about that. I'm not sure it's the exact same payment collection, but I got a card when I went there to a conference, and it worked great. The other thing they have is tap on, tap off for everything, including buses, and I thought that was terrific. It didn't slow anything down, and it was an easy way to actually let them know you wanted to get off. I mean, basically, when you're pushing something to tell them you want to get off at the next stop, they're using you use your card to do that, and so they have all the data for all the tap on, tap off data, which was and it didn't slow anything down at all. It just worked extremely well. Then the last thing from a little bit earlier's discussion, are you working with the other big transit agencies and with kind of national pay systems, and someone mentioned coffee shops, but as you look down the road, there's got to be advantages if a number of large transit systems are using similar methodologies, and someone who's familiar with Boston maybe can use it in San Francisco or LA or DC.
Yeah, I think actually integrating the sort of back end
Right.
is difficult, but I do think we are having some sort of sharing experience with other transit agencies in terms of the system design, and as well as like other payment, just sort of like learning from other people. As sort of, I think part of it is sort of thinking about the future of contactless credit cards introduction
Right.
into the U.S. Sort of like how that might work since the system is being built to accommodate those. So we are talking with like other potential retailers who would be interested in sort of advocating for banks to issue contactless credit cards.
Yeah, and for example, the supermarkets, which in some parts of the country, maybe not big cities, really provide a lot of services, but they also attract a big spend. That's the one thing about supermarkets. Somebody is doing, I don't know, picking up their medicine or doing this or that. There's usually a separate area of the supermarket that's got a person or two at it, so it doesn't really add a lot to their overhead. And they're attracting a lot of big spenders. But anyway, they're also open a lot of hours. Banks are not open very many hours. If the ATMs are one thing, but the banks themselves pretty much worthless for hours. Anyway, thanks.
Point of order on the schedule.
Yeah.
The 6:35 is based on a 5:45 start.
Okay,
They
and we start at 5:30, so we should
so,
probably
yeah.
let you go. I just was so excited to
Yeah,
have
no.
you here. Should we take one more question?
Two more?
Okay, but yeah.
Okay.
Well, Karen, you were my
Oh,
one.
yeah.
What?
You're my number one.
Oh, hey, well, that's my first time being number one. I disagree about the tap on, tap off. When I'm on a crowded bus, getting on, tap, 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 getting off, you're in the middle, you gotta reach down, otherwise you gotta hold your pass up and out. I think you gotta, that would work fine on commuter rail or on a bus, but crowded buses, no.
Have you been on systems that work that way?
No, but I'm telling you, it's not gonna work on the 39 when the bus goes right by because he or she cannot fit one more person on. So you're in the middle, you've already put your pass away, you're getting off, you're scooting through everything, you gotta get your pass out? No.
No, you don't do it at the end. It's wherever you push the button to say, I want to get off at this stop.
Wherever I'm getting off, you gotta push through all these people who are jammed in the bus, and probably on the
okay.
subway also.
I
Well,
would
the
like to-
subway's different.
I'd like to add to that just for a second, because when you brought that up, I thought of how my mother would never, ever, ever be able to find the pass twice in a day. I mean, ever, even when she was young. So, go ahead.
Okay, with regard to privacy policies, the security aspects of AFC 2.0, well, I'll focus on just the policy aspects of it. Are there elements of the privacy policy or related policies that you fear you won't be able to implement the way that you want because of, for example, the infrastructure of the current MBTA AFC network? In other words, is there anything that's not up to snuff in the fiber optics, the network gear, the hardware that makes up AFC that would be an impediment to applying the privacy and security policies that you want to do?
So there's very strict requirements in the contract for that,
Yeah.
and all of that stuff is essentially being replaced.
Oh, okay, even like infrastructure components, not just in-station. Oh, I didn't realize the infrastructure was too.
Yeah, so
That's
most of that is
great.
all being replaced. And
Okay.
so, yeah, that's not, and we have sort of privacy restrictions built into the contract already, above and beyond the sort of like credit card industry
Yep.
restrictions.
Super.
Yeah. In terms of the tap on and tap off, what I would say about that is that the system design is only requiring tap on, tap off on the commuter rail, effectively. Maybe. Yeah, so the commuter rail, because that's how our fare structure is based on the zones, we're building in the infrastructure where it would be possible in the future to add it to a different type of service, but I definitely think there'll be many conversations about that before it is done. I think, there's the trade-offs around wanting the data versus the sort of convenience for passengers versus like how the fare structure, whether a fare structure required or not. So there's been no decisions around sort of tapping off on subway or on bus, but we're just building it in case we want to do it in the future.
I think.
One other place, you guys are gonna love this. The local portion of express buses,
Oh, interesting.
you have to tap off because to get the local fare.
Okay.
Well, I forget what we talked about, just to follow up. I think we talked about it in the subcommittee, but I thought there was a conversation about perhaps not requiring tap off, but sort of incentivizing it in order to get the data. So again, this is just potential. Say you wanted to get the data for
But
tap
it's only
offs.
if you think the people who would follow the incentives are randomly distributed by their
Right.
GPS.
Exactly. Right.
Well, I want to thank Laurel and Anthony for being here
On
today.
that note.
Anthony.
Yep.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you so much.
And Andrew took very good notes, I saw him.
Yes, he's always awesome.
And that new mobility marketplace was the most exciting.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So I'll be in touch with you.
All right.
And this recording live stream is on public YouTube, so if you just Google for Rider Oversight Committee, I'll send you the link.
Yes, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Having us.
Good to see you again.
Great job, by the way. Keep up the good work.
Great job.
Yeah, lots to do.
So,
You set a new standard now, you got the $100.
I know, I can't help it, they're just so nice. So now, should we go to the capital investment and finance
Sure.
report? We did the marketing communications without you.
Perfect. Oh, that's okay.
Oh, I don't even missed out.
It was riveting.
So we had a great guest speaker this month. We had Andrew talk about a lot of the work that's going on around transit signal priority. Andrew and his team put together a kind of a roadmap for communities that want to, I think it's called a guidebook, you all right? Want to implement transit signal priority. So Boston obviously is leading the way today, but we're getting some pilots in Cambridge, Watertown, and Everett going on right now. So it kind of just lays out what you want to do in terms of getting signals and the process and things like that. But we also talked about where it's going to be coming in the future. So right now in Boston, it's along the E line and along the Silver line, and we're going to be expanding to a few of the bus routes, also all the above ground Green Line stops. The big benefit will also come in if we pair it with the bus lanes, which are not always the case, but it is good to get one if not the other, moving towards a bus rapid transit, but not quite the whole thing. We did talk about it in the capital investment subcommittee because Andrew obviously a frequent guest staff from CTPS, so I know it's more of a marketing thing that we're usually getting into. But one thing we did talk about from a cost perspective is that from an installation standpoint, it is fairly cheap technology, at least from my expectation. It's not millions of dollars. Well, it could be millions of dollars for say all of Boston, but from a local level for a couple intersections, the cost was in the few thousand. So it is the emphasis on the city to put this in. It's not really a T-driven thing necessarily, but I did see it as a pretty good bang for your buck. That is something I think is definitely something cities should do as they're looking to improve the bus network as the traffic has gotten a lot worse. Buses stuck in traffic, decreased ridership, all of that. So that's my summary. Anything to add?
And I think that hits on the major points. I think the underlying sort of my sentiment is that if you want to increase ridership, you put them in a dedicated lane so that they're not in traffic and you give them a green light every time. And that pretty much improves bus service anyway to the level of subway or light rail. But did you send the link to that guidebook around to the full group?
No, I just sent it to something.
That might be worth doing, because there's a lot of information. The idea was to get this sort of inventory of what is happening now with transit signal priority and where might things be going in the future. It's a big work.
So I was surprised to find out that there had been a TSP, program, in Boston, or where it was, and then when was it, and then it had fallen into disuse or disrepair.
Yeah. So a lot of the information came from interviews that CTPS did with municipal officials, and a representative from Boston Transportation Department said, yeah, we had TSP along the B line and the E line in the 80s and early 90s, and it fell into disrepair. Now we don't.
So then my concern, from the capital side was how do you make it such that, when you build out these programs that they are, maintained, and so, and then another aspect of this too is that it kind of, makes you think about transportation on a regional basis, and so Boston has a control center, for its transportation system. But once you get into Cambridge, you're in a completely different, transportation environment. But there's a lot of traffic going between Boston and Cambridge. It might be better, if it was all part of a larger transportation network. And of course, there are local government issues with that. But I think the future of transportation, is probably going to require us to really think about it on a more regional basis, and perhaps the way to do that, is to I'll just use some crude language. Get the state to kind of buy out the towns in terms of running their transportation systems. So we'll give you the money to let us run it. And I say that's crude because it's very simplistic, and it may not be even remotely the way you do that, but the whole point is that you can.
I was expecting R-rated language, and you didn't. And you came out with
multiple
definitions.
Yeah, rough. Okay, sorry. Rough. I meant unrefined.
Where's the zinger? I'm looking for it.
Unrefined, most likely to be, grossly inaccurate. But just to try to get a sense of, anyways. But I can give you credit.
No, we're televised here, so don't.
I'm glad it turned out the way it did.
I got to throw in one personal comment about the TSP that was put on the Green Line, at least on the B line. I went to BU in the early 90s, and it wasn't really designed from the get-go to be even maintainable. I mean, I remember looking at it. It looked like somebody had gone to Home Depot and gotten some lumber and some wire and put these things in between the tracks. I mean, they were falling apart within the first 18 months. I mean, it was really not designed, from what I personally saw. And apologies if I'm casting aspersions. It's not my intent to cast aspersions on anyone, but it looked like it was intended to be sort of like a proof of concept and not anything that was going to last more than maybe 2 winters. It just wasn't built to last.
Maybe we could find out more about a good TSP.
Well,
No,
That's what's being deployed now is a good one.
Okay.
Well,
I meant not just in talk, but pictures and.
well, I'll send you a guidebook, which you won't read, but I'll send it to you.
I'd like to see that.
Somebody will read it.
Agreeable. I've read about half of it. It's very good.
But you have pictures of machines and.
Yeah, I mean, the guidebook itself is sort of a high level.
What about an engineering level?
There are.
I could just Google.
Yeah,
it.
there are links to that.
Yeah.
Actually,
We didn't
I have
want to
sent it to you
rewrite
already.
We didn't want to, reinvent
With the wheel, no. Do they use it in New York? Do you know New York City?
Gosh, I don't know.
On the but I don't know. I know the crosstown buses in New York City, you can walk faster than me.
Actually, since you're on the subcommittee, I sent you the
Okay, and I will
PDF.
read every word and give a report at the next meeting.
Great.
Terrific.
We will pencil in some time, that'd be terrific.
I may just get sick that meeting.
Yeah, I understand that we might, that you'll, that things can happen, I understand. Anything more from you?
No, I think Len had mentioned possibly having Paul Regan
Yes.
at a future meeting again for the budget discussion. But
Yeah, I'm probably going to be April or May, I mean, after, he's said this before, and try and get Brendan Fogarty, to talk about parks and the corporate pass system again next month. And this point, March is open, we'll see. You wanted to ask something?
I just want to volunteer that I know from being a Lynn resident and from having on occasion, used to be on a regular basis, taking the buses that are based out of the Lynn garage. That particular corridor that's adjacent to the Lynn garage is maybe a mile of really congested, lots of signal intersections. If there's any way that, or not any way, if there's any interest in me pursuing what the Lynn city officials, I know all the councilors who were on the transportation committee, or they call it the traffic committee. If there's any TSP of interest to go into that area, let me know. I'll ask them about it, because I think there's, 8 bus routes out of the Lynn garage that actually traverse that stretch, and some of them are pretty high ridership. So just wanted to put that out there. I'm willing to do some knocking on doors in my city council.
Yeah, to add to that, one of the big takeaways was that the T is interested in partnering with municipalities. And they've done that in Arlington and Cambridge, and getting these pilot projects off the ground. So it will take sort of a decentralized approach, I think, and if there was interest in Lynn, then Lynn calls up the T and says, how do we work on this?
I see interest in Lynn.
So was there interaction with MPO to get the projects you talked about done? Or was that just, I mean, Cambridge has
No, I don't.
lots of
I
money,
don't think
and
they-
Everett has
I don't
lots of
think they
casino
were.
money, but
And Lynn's got no money.
I would be surprised if, I don't know, Watertown or, I
That's
mean,
Bar Foundation, right?
Yeah, it was Bar Foundation funding, I think, otherwise they were capital.
yeah, generally you're gonna have to run that through the MPO, I think, for a city like Lynn, where you don't have excess cash.
But maybe the Bar Foundation would do something for Lynn too. Why not?
Well, they might.
Yeah, can ask.
I'm worried
Yeah.
about our time and wondering if we should move on to approving the minutes.
Sure. Well, there are no minutes, because,
Well, the minutes from last time, he sent them around.
oh, for December.
Yes.
Okay, that's right, that's true. Yeah, I see.
So, did anybody read them, and does anybody have any comments other than they were great, and we don't know what we're gonna do now without somebody here?
I think they're fine. And so,
Okay.
I motion to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so moved. As we're getting out of this, we have reports of external meetings, old business, new business. We can do reports on external meetings.
So at the RTAC meeting, Regional Transportation Advisory Council, Bill Cutner talked about freight and essentially intermodal freight and it had limited impact on public transportation, but freight is increasing, and the population increasing, and people are doing more, or getting more things, and so it's important to think about it. One question would be from another member of the RTAC was, is the Amazon model changing the way that people approach freight? And Bill said well, I guess Amazon has like its own warehousing system, and that he felt that Amazon wasn't like the kind of warehouses that Home Depot uses, and because it's so random to a certain extent what people get, whereas with Home Depot, in the winter you get one kind of item, or certain types of items, and so they can stock their warehouses. And my thoughts though was that even if individually it's random, in the aggregate, I bet it's not so random. And I bet like seasonally, people are getting certain kinds of items, and I'll bet there's a lot of intelligence, for lack of a better word, that Amazon uses in order to determine how to stock their warehouses. So I'm not sure how different it really is from someplace like Home Depot. And I asked them, because in the Future Transportation Report, they had mentioned, that they didn't take freight, into account, and that was a missing element, of the consideration. And so I asked Bill about that, and Bill was like, well, these companies, they are very smart, and they figure out, what works best for them, and so it's all good. And I was like thinking, well, it's just, I think we just need some kind of a framework for them, to work in. And it just struck me as a little bit too laissez-faire, in terms of just kind of leave it up to the transportation companies, or the freight companies determine, how they're going to use the roadways, and they'll figure out the best way to do it, and it'll be okay. So to me, it's like maybe we can get Bill in here to talk about that at some point. But that was my feelings about that.
Just to build on that a
Sure.
tiny bit, but sort of not really building on it at all. Last week or the week before at work, some woman said, "Does anybody want?" And I forget what she named. It was whether it was a cut of beef or pork or something. She said, because there's an Amazon truck going around right now, and we can go buy beef out of a truck. I was like, I'm not buying beef out of a truck. But apparently, she got some sort of message from Amazon saying that the beef truck is in town, and you pre-order it.
Right.
And then you go to your truck and you ask for your
So
size.
it's not a beef truck, it is a deals truck.
Oh, is that what it is?
So if you're on that list, every
So I
day.
could have gotten an AC or a slice of beef.
So the first time I saw it, it was selling PlayStations.
Yeah.
So because it was.
Oh, wait, I saw that PlayStation one.
Yeah, it's the same truck. It just changes what it's selling every day, and you have to know where to go.
Right. Okay.
I'm not on the alerts. I have.
I'm not.
How are you on there? Did you get beef?
No, I just wanted to comment that I think Bill Cutner probably focuses on the transport, and the warehouses are a massive scale real estate operation.
Yes.
There is a massive real estate industry that focuses just on automated warehouses. So if you're looking at the trucks and trains and ships, you're looking at the wrong industry. And you got to be looking at the major global warehouse players.
Yeah. And apparently, they're getting a little harder to. It's getting harder for them to get the real estate. Especially,
Well, these are really big.
Yeah.
Like 500,000 square feet.
Right. Bigger.
Yeah, but these are global companies.
And also,
they're very sophisticated.
And one thing is that it used to be they thought they'd be better to have them closer to Boston, but if it turns out that they would bring the freight into Boston, still have to kind of like back it out to Worcester.
Right.
So they like to have it kind of like a little bbit east of Worcester, because it didn't make sense to bring it in by train. These are intermodal warehouses, so you bring it in by train, offload, and then you take the last few miles of it are all by truck. Which is why to me, the interface, between them, and the roads and transit is so important. It's just that now you have these trucks on the road, and you think about how they're going to work with the rest of the traffic.
Yeah, with all due respect to them, that sounds like a little bit of sour grapes, because CSX gave up the Beacon Yard, one of the biggest intermodal freight area in New England because the business was declining. Now if they're saying, oh, well, we don't want to have it in Boston, we'd rather have it somewhere, I mean, that's just because there is only one intermodal yard that happens to be in Framingham. It's not like they have a choice.
If you've seen that sour grapes, then I think it's because I presented it the wrong way.
Oh, okay.
So
Well, I apologize.
Yeah, so it wasn't that they were, I was just saying that the real estate, in terms of building these big intermodal warehouses, finding the land, is an issue.
Oh, and that's more likely to happen out in, okay.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you.
And then any
Yeah.
other reports, we're getting close on time.
No, that's it.
Any other reports, and thank you for that.
No, it's fine.
I'm sorry to cut you off, I'm sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Any other reports on external meetings? Any old business? Okay, this is old business. I am happy to serve as your co-chair if you want me.
Thank you.
Could everybody clap, please? No.
Well, it's just, I do, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you want to say
They'll stand up.
No, that's okay, that's okay.
No,
But I'm
actually.
happy to do that, and in large part, this was because of all the support I got in terms of, especially from Len, but from many of you here, because getting the speakers has been something that causes me a lot of stress. And Len got us a speaker tonight. Looks like we got February, looks like we've got March, so that's really helping me a lot because I enjoy leading the meetings. And we may or may not have Carl as our co-chair, so I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, we won't vote him until he's here. I mean, even though
We'll
he's
stand up and applaud for him.
But yeah, let's applaud for him.
Yes.
Because I think,
Yeah.
how can you turn that down? But anyway, so if you want me, I'm happy to serve as your co-chair again.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
and I want to thank you because I really enjoy doing this, so thank you. Any new business, other than we don't have any intern right now?
I think, we need a field trip, not in the winter.
Let's take a field trip.
Yeah, spring sometime. We used to go when we had more support from administration here. We would go on lots of field trips. So
Let's
think
get an
about it.
April field trip
Well,
together.
April, May. No, I don't want it to stress you out.
No, it won't.
Good.
It won't.
Good.
What do you think?
The top of my list is to go back to Wellington, the Orange Line car house. I think all of the veteran ROC members, in other words, everyone who's been on the ROC for more than 5 years, went to the Wellington car house back at that point. I took extensive pictures. I think you did too. I think you pretty much everybody that was there took some photos if they had a device to take photos. To compare and contrast, and seeing the new Orange Line cars all at once
That sounds
would
like
be
great fun.
really
I
great.
actually think that the new people should decide, because us old folks,
Good
we
point.
have been on a lot of field trips, where we even took a ferry ride, or we went to I can't remember. You can drink on the ferry, just so you can.
Why are you putting your hand
That changes my view.
Speak into the camera.
What's the drink policy? What's the drink policy at the Wellington warehouse?
No, I think nothing.
Okay.
Dos Equis.
Water.
So we're all gonna take a ferry to Hingham, and suddenly realize we're in Hingham, and none of us
Yeah.
none of us live more than I'm the closest one home.
So, anything else on old business, new business?
So when do you want us to have those, the things sent out? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
yes, everybody should have gotten their thing on the conflict of interest. Get to the next month or so, 2 months. It's not, it's actually kind of well done. They haven't changed over the years. You sort of answer questions as you go through. I get tripped up on the same question every 2 years.
Me too.
Involving some sort of gift over
Yeah.
$50, that's the one that always, just
Yeah.
ignore that. Even though you're not actually an employee, we're considered special employees of the state.
Yeah.
And so if we could do those, what's generally the easiest to do is to just take a screenshot. If you don't have I don't know who
Right.
still owns a printer, take a screenshot and you can send it in or send it over to me and I can print it and we'll turn them in. But just keep your try to get those done.
And as a tech note, if you are using a computer that doesn't have Adobe Flash installed, get ready for surprise, because still that conflict of interest test requires Adobe Flash. Oh, circa 19, it's like a flashback to the 90s. But I mention this because the workaround is if you download and install Google Chrome, that web browser has its own built-in little mini version of Flash. Adobe Flash is riddled with security issues. You don't want to have it on your computer if you can avoid it, but one of the ways to do something online that needs Flash is just to use Google Chrome browser. So that's just a
So if
And
you haven't,
if you don't even have a computer, you can use a library. All their computers have Chrome.
perfect.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
great. Alright.
yeah, so if we can just sort of think about doing those, I'd really appreciate it. And we'll think some more next time at the meeting, but if you can, I think it's about half an hour. I find it actually fairly well done. I don't know if anybody else does, but I find that they do a pretty decent job of it. And that's it. I don't think, is there any other old business, new business?
I have a couple things, if it's
Sure,
okay.
of course.
They're both red line. I think Lynn and others ride the red line more than I do, but I've been riding it a lot more this year. So one comment just on kind of interface systems between Harvard, Porter, Davis. Davis has they have different information systems, and they're different distances from the entry. And the one that I think really needs a little bit of attention is Porter, because if you're like going home late at night and you're trying to catch a bus in Davis from Harvard Law School or wherever, I have to go down in Porter, which is a pretty far way down, before
Yes,
I know when the train is coming. And if it's coming too late, I have to run back up and then run to Davis to catch the bus in Somerville. So all I'm saying is that a gateway flash sign that had the train arrivals and the time on it, just like they have at Davis, would be just super helpful at Porter, because it's so deep.
It is so deep.
It takes a long time to go up and down.
Either that, or they can move the station so it's not so deep, because it's really.
No,
annoying to go down.
I don't mind the deepness of the station.
Well, before you go down the long escalator, though, I mean,
There's nothing. There's no information.
there's a.
Not at Porter.
I thought there was
Yeah, at the ferry gates, there is a countdown.
Yeah.
The same LED orange
Yeah.
minutes display right
At
above.
Porter?
Yeah, Porter, yeah.
Right above the ferry gates.
Before you do the long escalator down, yeah.
I've never seen it. I've used it 200 times.
No, well, I mean, I
I was there last week. It's right there.
Well, so which escalator are you talking
The long
about?
escalator, the long one.
Porter Square, the big one. The
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I missed it. Okay,
Because I
sorry.
use it all the time
Well,
because it tells
listen,
you.
we're running out of time, but your wish is granted.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The other thing is, I mentioned a month or two ago that I thought the Red Line trains were feeling a little bit unstable at speed, and there's a lot of hinky stuff going on there. So the last 2 weekends, during service hours, they were down to one track unexpectedly and running trains in both directions. And people were getting on at Harvard, and they were going on the wrong track, wanting to get off at Porter or Davis, going past Porter and Davis, and then reversing and coming back and getting off on the back. And then one train had no lights at all. Whole Red Line train, full, no lights on. So I don't know whether they're working on the power systems or it's nighttime maintenance and they're not quite buttoning it back up. But this is 2 out of the last 3 weekends, not counting the train with no lights. So
You should make a request for all new red lines.
Um,
We can grant that wish too.
oh, thank you.
I can't grant you one wish, so.
So I share your concern about hearing that, yeah.
Okay, we're coming to a close.
Oops, sorry. Well, we'll take that in operation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
Well, thank you, everybody. So, do we need a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Yeah, I
meeting
never
you.
see that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good. Well,
Thank you.
it's hard to
It's
see
10
it.
seconds before starting.
I see it at the top of the second escalator.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
That's what we're talking
We are
about.
ending the stream.
No.
We're talking about the second one, so we're not talking about the.
No,